Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. What's your definition of a Christmas movie? I wasn't going to lead the podcast off like that, because how many Christmas episodes can you do in a single year? Don't put me to the challenge, I'll take it. But the movie we're reviewing today, talking about today, gushing over today, I'm sure, and applauding today, because it is a freaking classic. A lot of people consider this a Christmas movie. I happen to as well. Now, a lot of other people consider other films Christmas movies, and it's like, really? That movie? Come on. You know, sometimes I agree, sometimes I don't. It's all in what you think, kids. It's all subjective. A lot of stuff we talk about, there is no necessarily a right or wrong, good and evil, that kind of thing. It's just whatever your personal taste is. Because for everybody that loves this movie, I'll bet you there are people that can't stand it. I don't know how. It's beyond me. But I'm sure there's haters out there. There's haters everywhere, right? Unfortunately, they're always going to walk the earth. Kind of like Kane from Kung Fu. I'm just saying. So today we're talking about Trading Places. For me, this is a classic. All-time classic. I had this thing recorded on VHS when I was a kid when it came out. Not long after I went to video. Had a copy of it and wore it out. When I say wore it out, I mean destroyed it. Like it wouldn't even, I think the machine ate it at some point, like cassette tape or something. Because I couldn't quit watching it. It's ingrained in my head. It's one of those movies I grew up with. It's always in my mind. And it's nuts. Number one, how good this movie is. Number two, how much I remember. Number three, how much I can quote off the top of my head. It's like the original Star Wars trilogy and several other movies that I can quote at the drop of a hat with little to no provocation. Start quoting a movie, a comedy. It is what it is. I'm a nerd. It's how I roll. So we're talking about Trading Places, as we said. Directed by John Landis, released on June 8th, 1983. Full runtime of 116 minutes with an all-star cast, which we will definitely get to. Written by Timothy Harris and Herschel Weingrod. Let's see. Distributed, of course, by Paramount Pictures. It is a classic starring some SNL alums and some classically trained actors and some very familiar faces and famous people. This is one of those movies, kids, that if you've never seen it, you're doing life wrong. You've got to take time out of your day to see it. This movie, the budget was $15 million. It made box office total almost $121 million. That's to say, it made some coin. If I tell you the critics loved it, I don't know. I mean, some did, I'm sure. But overall, it was strong, a very strong light, generally favorable, something of that nature. But if you look back on it and through the prism of time, whether or not it holds up, we'll get to that for a couple of different reasons. But is it a classic? Absolutely a classic. It's got to be, of course, the two main stars, one of their most recognizable films of all time. And that essentially is the lowdown on Trading Places. So, Phil, how long has it been? Have you seen this movie? And does it hold up for you after all this time?
Yeah, it still holds up. It's one of those movies where I feel like I've seen it so many times that it's incredibly quotable. It's one of John Landis's classic movies on his run of great movies. Yeah, and it's I don't want to say it's Eddie Murphy's breakout role because I believe 48 Hours was before this movie, but it's definitely one of those movies that put Eddie Murphy on the map.
He, for sure. I mean, we talked about SNL. And of course, we're talking about the great Eddie Murphy, the great Dan Akroyd. Dan Akroyd, who's never been trimmer, never looked better. You could argue the same for Eddie, I would say, but they're both, of course, young. This is
Very,
back
very
in,
young Eddie Murphy.
yes,
Very young.
in his prime. Not even yet in his prime. Well, maybe, is this his prime? I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, this was well before his prime. Because I believe this is like his first or second movie. Um, for some reason I'm forgetting off the top of my head if 48 Hours came first. I think that this is his second movie because I believe it was 48 Hours and then this.
Let's see. Eddie Murphy, 1982 was 48 Hours. So there you go. A year prior, 1983. And look, to be fair, there was no guarantee 48 Hours was even going to work. And if it was released in 82, you would have to imagine that filming for Trading Places probably began immediately after filming Wrapped for 48 Hours, is my guess.
Yeah, that's true. But I feel like yeah, that's one of those movies that it was kind of built around Eddie Murphy's performance.
Yeah. I'm just looking at his filmography. 48 Hours, followed by Trading Places, followed by Best Defense. I have completely forgotten. That is Dudley Moore and Eddie Murphy. Do you even remember hearing anything about that film?
No.
Wow. I remember the poster now that I see it, but I don't even know that I've actually seen the film.
Yeah,
Beverly Hills Cop, of course, came in 84. So,
yeah. Yeah, when you think of the stretch of Eddie Murphy, it's 48 Hours, uh Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cop, of course, uh Golden Child,
mhm.
um
Coming to America was 88.
Coming to America was for right around that same time. Um then you got like Harlem Nights,
Mhm.
uh Boomerang.
I
There's
think Boomerang was not. It was 1990. I think 1992. Excuse me. For me, Boomerang signaled something. It signaled a change, and maybe that's just the way I saw it or the way I remember it. I just remember thinking this is not what I'm used to from him. Like I didn't hate the film, but like
oh,
I just remember it was not. I don't know. I guess it wasn't what I expected, like the slapstick sort of comedy that he was doing before. You know?
because he's essentially the straight guy in his own movie. That
Yeah.
he does a lot of comedy as well in this movie, but I feel like the good thing about Boomerang is the cast. I feel like at that time you didn't see many all black casts like that, and you didn't see as many up and coming comedians coming together and doing something like that. Like I feel like that was one of those roles that put Martin on. I know he had House Party before that, but um, that helped put him on. Um, man, John Witherspoon in that movie is forever classic. Got to coordinate.
Oh, I love that guy, man. So good.
Yeah, so many John Witherspoon quotables from that movie. Um, Marcus, I heard you got some woman at work got you pussy whipped. You can't do that. You gotta reverse.
Oh man, dude, you realize we've never really dove into Eddie stuff. We've done the Nutty Professor and never did part 2, by the way. Um,
Yeah, Eddie had a run.
yeah.
He had a massive run.
Yeah, he did. Let's see. Yeah,
Because I
God, and
mean,
classic movies.
yeah, when you say I definitely don't think this is his peak because in '83, I don't think Raw had come out yet, and I think Raw was around what 86, 87.
87. Yeah. Beverly Hills Cop 2 was 87 also.
Yeah, I feel like he hit a run around the mid '80s going into the '90s where he was the guy. Like he was probably like not even probably he was the hottest black stand up comedian and
Mm-hmm.
leading man at that time, like a legitimate leading man. Like because a lot of comedians like they kind of stumble when they get roles in movies. A lot of times they end up doing like the supporting actor stuff, but nah, Eddie was a legitimate leading man.
He was. Eddie has done 41 films.
Not all winners, guys, but
Not all winners.
uh, the initial run he went on is unmatched.
And even his misses, like Metro should have been a better movie. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah,
And I mean, there's other films. Bowfinger is memorable for certain reasons certain characters. But
Bowfinger is a very funny movie. Um,
it's funny.
there are several Eddie Murphy movies that are not what I would call conventionally good movies,
Yeah.
but I still defend them because they're still funny. Norbit is one of them. Norbit is a bad movie. Oh, it's a bad movie, but oh, it's so many parts in it that are very funny to
Oh,
me.
Norbit, dude. Pope Sweet Jesus and Lord Have Mercy. My two favorite character names of all time. Can't go wrong, dude. And
Yeah,
Rasputia. Holy God, dude.
yeah. No, but he for a minute he you couldn't touch this guy. For a minute he was the guy.
Yeah. No, you're right for sure. And you know, of course everyone knew how funny he was when this came out. Sometimes we cover things here on the 6M and we talk about things like, well, do you like did anyone know what they were in for? This is just the beginning. Did we really know? Come on, man. I think everybody in 1983 knew Eddie Murphy had the ability to become something massive. Like you can't contain the guy. He's so incredibly funny. Like you just need the right screenwriter and the right director, as you do with Jim Carrey, as you do with Will Ferrell, to help point his comedy in the right direction. Robin Williams, you could argue, same thing. Very funny, but can also be dramatic, really good actor. But like he needs someone to point the arrow, right? So I mean, you have
Yeah.
the right combination with Eddie Murphy, dude. He's gonna kill it every time.
Yeah, I agree. I think early on, especially coming out of the Saturday Night Live stuff, nah, he could miss. I think it was just
Yeah,
a matter of putting him in in roles and letting him do what he does best.
for sure. And he's on his he's on his game here. And that's where we begin, children. Eddie Murphy is Billy Ray Valentine, best name ever. I'm a big pop vinyl guy, as a lot of listeners know. I do have the pop vinyls from Trading Places. I got Billy Ray Valentine on his knees on the little cart with the wheels on it. He's got the sunglasses on. And I've also got Louis Winthorpe in the Santa Claus suit with a piece of meat in his hands. So just saying, those are downstairs for Christmas.
Um, yeah, him him at the initial start of the movie, dragging his knees around on that cart is still hilarious to me.
Still hilarious. And when he's got the girl and he says, "We can make it, baby. Me and you." I love that. Oh my God. Like he's never met her a day in his life, but he's just hitting on her so hard.
Yeah, he's supposedly blind. Um, I love that he not only goes from just trying to scam people and say that he doesn't have legs, but he's also blind
Of
somehow too.
course. Double whammy. And then like when he sees the cops, he starts doing the Stevie Wonder routine with his head. Like that's this'll fool him. I know there's cops. I'm gonna fool him with this I'm blind routine.
A staple of Eddie Murphy's comedic routine is his
Hmm.
his Stevie Wonder impersonation.
His rendition of My Cherie Amour is classic. Classic. Um, Yeah, I mean, we could have made the whole show about Eddie, to be honest with you, kids, because he's so good. He's so good. Man, I want Eddie Murphy, and I know they're doing the next Beverly Hills Cop film, and we don't have to talk about that unless you want to. But I, I want him to not just make a comeback. I want him to absolutely crush and kill everything he puts his hands on. And I don't know
I,
why, but I guess the sentimental part of me and the part that's watching this film again for the 200th time or whatever, I'm sure more than that at this point in my life. I just want to see him back on top. I wanted to see him get his flowers and be respected, which I'm sure he is, but I want him to be front of mind. I don't want it to be a nostalgia trip with Eddie. I want it to be this guy can still do it. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, I think he's had his time. I would love to see him do one last stand up. That is
Yeah.
definitely something I want to see him do at some point. And he's talked about wanting to do stand up again, so I hope that he eventually does a comedy special.
Yeah, same here. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. Let's talk about his immediate co-star, just to his left, Mr. Dan Aykroyd as Louis Winthorpe the third. I defy anyone to recast this movie and do better during 1983 than Akroyd and Eddie Murphy. I don't think it's possible. They are absolutely the best choices for both these roles. Akroyd is so incredibly believable as the posh and upstanding, bright young man. Lewis Winthorpe, never done anything wrong in his life. You know, he's perfectly groomed, the perfect girlfriend. Everyone's speaking very proper. He has the perfect life. He says so. He's great. I don't, Dan Aykroyd, in my opinion, one of the best comedic actors of our generation. He's just so good. And like, he's remembered for the blockbuster roles, and he should be. Uh, and people can criticize wherever they want to, but for my money, pound for pound, Dan Aykroyd's one of the best of all time. He's just so good. I mean, dude, what do you think about the pairing of Aykroyd and Murphy? It doesn't get. I mean, dude, you're talking about Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder when you're talking about Aykroyd and Murphy. In my opinion, I wish we would have seen more from these two guys together in a movie.
We were supposed to get more. It just didn't work out
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know if listeners know Eddie Murphy was supposed to be the fourth Ghostbuster.
Yes, he was.
Um, and so we're supposed to get more of them together. Just didn't happen. Um, which that is a completely different role of Winston without. Yeah, it's completely different with Eddie in that role. I don't know. It's weird to even think about Eddie Murphy in Ghostbusters. Like I don't know if it needed him, but it would have been an interesting kind of what if he ended up in Ghostbusters. Um,
And
yeah,
by the way, I'll do you one better. I think the answer is yes. Had you not had Aykroyd or Bill Murray,
hmm.
you know what I mean? Like with the two of those guys chewing up so much scenery, and I don't know. Would the trio have worked? Would it have been? Can they get enough screen time between the three? They're all such three megastars. Can they get enough screen time between the three of them? Does it work? Does it not? That's an interesting way to look at it, man.
Yeah, I think that Winston character would have been had a larger role, of course,
Oh yeah.
if Eddie had taken on a role. Um, I don't know. Uh, one of those many what ifs in Hollywood. Uh, yeah, but Dan Aykroyd is great in this. Like you said, this is possibly the best shape he's ever been in any role he's been in.
Mm.
This is the best he looks. Like he's this is young and you know full head of hair. Uh, he's great. I think that he does all of the posh stuff well. I think his comedic timing and all the scenes where he has to be legitimately funny is great. Um, I think I don't care how many times I hear him do the line of, uh, "Oh, it was just a dream, Coleman. I was poor and everybody hated me, and it was all because of this terrible, awful Negro."
Oh, classic, classic. And then of course he tackled him to the floor, and I can't wait to get into the premise of this because I'm gonna hit you with that as soon as we get through the cast because I can't wait to talk about it. Um, let's talk about the Dukes. Ralph Bellamy as Randolph Duke, Don Amici as Mortimer Duke. These guys, man, what careers they had in Hollywood, dude. Well respected actors, funny, great comedic timing, which, a funny thing happened in the 80s, kids. Very dramatic actors got, in my opinion, a second lease on life. Robert Stack, Leslie Nielsen. Um, who else am I thinking of? I'm thinking about Airplane, obviously. But, a lot of those old school guys that you're like, well, their time's past. Their heyday was in the 60s, 70s. Dude, suddenly it's like, well, straight guys being funny is a thing. And that's hilarious if you're good at it. And those three guys I just mentioned were very good at it. I mean, it's again, you have to have timing, and both these guys have it. Perfectly cast here, Phil. Again, I don't know of anybody else you could get, and it doesn't matter now anyway because they are the Dukes. When I look at these two guys, separate or together, they are the Dukes. I mean, talk about how great these guys are in this movie, man. They're just the right level of creepy, like creepy old white dude, because that's the roles, right? But like I don't know. There's moments when it feels like maybe Randolph's not such a bad guy. Then he turns out to be an absolutely horrible person. What do you think about these two?
Yeah, I think for a good amount of the movie, we're kind of holding on to Randolph might not be that bad, and maybe Mortimer
Yes.
is the worst of the two, but they're both awful. And I just think that their chemistry together is just so great. Every time I've seen them do something together, and when somebody basically pointed out to me that uh, they're essentially the two old men from the Muppets, and I was like, they are.
Yep. Yep.
That's basically who they are. Um,
Statler and Waldorf.
yeah,
Great.
and so yeah, no, they're great. Like this movie wouldn't be what it is without them.
Oh, so good. They're both so good. And like you're right. I'm so glad you put it that way, by the way. We were all holding out hope for Randolph Duke. And then the scene in the bathroom happens when, you know, uh, Mortimer says, "Do you really think I'd have an inn run our family business?" And Randolph goes, "Of course not. Neither would I." And I thought, no, like we were so close. I was hoping he'd go. Now look, that's a bit far. Let's don't go that route. I like the kid. Let's keep him. But nope. Yeah, showed his true colors, man. So, old money, old rich guys, the establishment. Oh God, dude, there's so much going on, and all this feels a silly comedy. But if you want to take a shovel, we can start digging because man, there's a lot of stuff here. Honestly, in my opinion. Let's don't forget Denholm Elliott as Coleman. Marcus Brody from the Indiana Jones trilogy. I love this guy to death. He's so good. Again, straight lace, straight man, very funny, great timing. Dude, he's great as Coleman. And this honestly, you probably could have cast anybody here and it probably would have been fine. Would have been no problem. But he just makes the role like when you think of Trading Places, you don't not think about the butler. Like he's a memorable character, man. That role could have been thrown away on anybody, but Denholm Elliott made it work.
Yeah, he doesn't he doesn't get a lot of stuff to do, but I think all of his moments where he gets comedic stuff to do is hilarious. Like every time I think of him in Trading Places, I think of him walking around with the hors d'oeuvres when when the party is going on and the two women are topless, and he just stops and starts looking around like, oh.
What about when he's on the phone and the Dukes are telling him about the plan? And he goes, "Well, it is your house, son. I do work for you." Then he hangs up and he's like, "What a scumbag!" And he just walks away. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
So many great moments, man. We had to talk about the great Jamie Lee Curtis. Phil, when this movie came out, I was 10, and a topless Jamie Lee Curtis was the stuff dreams are made of, and still is. I have a you know, deep admiration for Miss Curtis. Holy Lord. So, yeah. Not to
There
condone women going topless in movies, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone relax. I'm saying as a 10-year-old, holy God, this shaped a lot of my future, you know, fascination with the opposite sex.
Yeah, there were two defining Jamie Lee Curtis scenes as a kid and discovering women. It's this, and of course, the True Lies scene.
Oh, we've got to do True Lies. I love that freaking movie to pieces. And she's so good in it, dude. She's so good. Yeah, the dance. Oh my God in heaven. Stop. I can't even talk about it. Yeah. She goes topless twice in this movie. Not to focus on it, kids. She plays Ophelia, who is a prostitute. Um, she's great. She's great. Her and Akroyd look good together. They match. Um, it works. She
Yeah,
has a soft spot in her heart for him. Dude, she falls for him very fast, doesn't she?
yeah, it happens pretty fast. Yeah, um, that's the other thing when I think of Trading Places because it's on TV so often. It's often like on network television. Of course, they don't show any of the topless stuff. They don't show any of that stuff. So I believe the first time I saw it, I didn't see that part. And I remember I saw it like the unedited version one day, and I was like, "Wait, whoa, what's happening here?"
This is quite good. Oh man, yeah,
I
dude.
mean, it doesn't take anything away from the movie without that
No,
stuff
not
in
at
it.
all. No.
I think that it's still a classic that it is. It's still funny. Um, there are other things that are edited out when you see it on TV that it still doesn't really lose anything. Um, but it's definitely one of those things from that time period. There's several things from this movie that are like, yeah, this is definitely an '80s movie.
Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right. We're definitely going to get to it. Let's see. Of note also, Paul Gleason, who's done a lot of other things since this movie, as Clarence Beeks, who seems to be like just this underhanded dude that the Dukes hire to do their dirty work. He's sort of the bad guy for hire of this film. Um,
Beaks. Uh,
Beeks.
yeah, I mean, of course, when you think of Paul Gleason, you think of Breakfast Club and other things he's been
Yep.
in. But no, he's great in this. Of course, he always finds a way to throw a threat in a movie, and it's just so it's just so almost off-putting. Like, wait a minute, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah. Man, we've lost several people in this movie, man. We lost him in 2006, which I don't know if I knew that. We lost Ralph Bellamy in 1991. Has it been that long? Dude, if that's true, wow. Dude, he only. No way is that true. Is that true?
I mean, he's pretty
I guess
old
so.
then, wasn't he? I
Yeah.
think he was in his
91. So
80s.
he only made it for 8 years after this film.
Yeah, I think he was already in his 80s by that point. So he was an old guy.
Yeah. Don Amici, we lost in 93. And the Duke's return, kids. We have to mention the Duke's return, which was effing great. And then they got a callback in the second Coming to America film. Good for Eddie, man. I love that he tied the films together. It's so cool that he did that, dude.
Randolph.
We're back, right? Oh, so good, so good. Um, we've got other cast members here, but that is your main cast, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we're going to dive into this story. Can't wait to do this. And here's a little tidbit that I don't know if I knew this. One of the writers that we mentioned before, I think we mentioned one of the writers before, Timothy Harris. Yes, one of the co-writers of the screenplay. Here's the story. In the early 80s, he often played tennis against two wealthy but frugal brothers who regularly engaged in a competitive rivalry and betting. Following one session, Harris returned home exasperated with the pair's conflict and concluded that they were awful people. The situation gave him the idea of two brothers betting over nature versus nurture in terms of human ability. He shared the idea with his writing partner, Herschel Weingrod, who liked the concept. Harris also drew inspiration for the story from his own living situation. He lived in a rundown area near Fairfax Avenue in LA. He described the area in grim terms as crime ridden, where everyone either had a gun pointed at them or had been raped. They researched the commodities market for the script. That's a whole other topic, Phil. They learned of financial market incidents, including Russian attempts to corner the wheat market and the Hunt brothers' efforts to corner the silver market on what became known as Silver Thursday. They thought trading orange juice and pork bellies would be funnier because the public would be unaware such mundane items were traded. Harris consulted with people in the commodities business to understand how the film's finale on the trading floor would work. The pair determined that the story in Philadelphia, because of its connections to the founding of the United States, the American dream and idealism, and the pursuit of happiness. It was tempered by introducing Billy Ray Valentine as a black man begging on the street. The pair knew that the method of Winthorpe's and Valentine's financial victory could be confusing, but hoped the audiences would be too invested in the character's success to care about the details. And that's 100% true. So, Phil, the story, this is just a comedy. That's all it has to be. But man, the story here is really good. Like, listen, man, I've had, conversations over the years about Like, the situation you're in, did you create it or was it created for you? Are you a product of your environment or did you create your environment? Do you have the power to escape your environment? Dude, where do you fall on this, man? And you can go as deep or as on the surface as you want, but I'm curious what your take is on this.
Um, I definitely think that your environment helps to mold you into who you are. Um, I think when you grow up with uh, when you grow up with a knowledge of what money means, and how it's a means to an end, and the value of a dollar, and not just and really a real plan on how to make money moving forward and how to make long-term goals. That's something that stays with you your entire life. A lot of people don't really get that lesson early. um, I think when you talk about stuff like systemic racism and how that has affected a lot of minorities in this country, um, yeah, I definitely think that environment shapes who you are in a lot of ways. Now, I do think people can overcome that,
Hmm.
and you can, come from a bad environment and you know excel and go somewhere else in life. But I absolutely think that where you grew up and where you come from shapes you.
I agree 100%. I think that it can play a part, but I think in the end of the day, you know, how bad do you want out? Maybe is the best way for me to put it. Because, dude, we've seen and heard of many success stories, not just in Hollywood, Phil, but I'm sure you know people personally, I do too, who came from absolutely nothing. And they may not be millionaires now, but they're doing okay. Like they were in a bad situation, they got away from it, they managed to do it. It wasn't easy. And I know plenty of people that couldn't get out for whatever reason. I mean, everybody's different. It's not like this is a blanket statement to cover everyone, but I do believe you have a say so in your fate. How much of a say so you have, not really my call. And I think that changes from person to person. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I just think that the American dream in a lot of ways is just it's a scam. I've thought this for a long time, but it's a scam. Um,
mhm.
it's a big time scam. I think that a lot of people buy into this idea that anybody is a good decision away from being rich, and I just don't think that that is reality.
No, dude, I think your circumstances have a lot to do with it. I don't, I, I don't think it has everything to do with it, but no, we can't. Background is going to play a role in this for sure. Your
Yeah,
your environment's going to play a role. Anybody that says that doesn't is crazy.
yeah. And I've had this debate with people where people are like, ah, people should make excuses. Hard work um, will always be more indicative than where you came from or who you know, which is just not true. Um, a lot of stuff that I've accomplished in life, it's very much who you know and connections you make along the way. That's why networking is so important in
It
any
is.
field you're in. Um, so yeah, I do think that hard work matters, and I do think that a lot of stuff that we've been taught through the American dream, like pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, has its merits, but at the same time, uh, no, I think that there are hardworking people in this world that feel like there's a ceiling for them because of the opportunities that they were given, and some people are given opportunities without having to work for them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's just the truth of the matter.
God, we
Um,
see that so much. Not to go off on a today's time suck versus older times or whatever, but we see that a lot now, dude. Honestly.
Yeah, and I mean it's just a different time too than like when my dad was growing up, and you know people were working in steel mills or working in factories. That kind of work doesn't exist anymore. So, kind of the day and age of blue collar work is slowly going away. So it's not the same where people just think that, oh, well, if you work hard and you do this, it'll work out in the long run. Yes and no.
Yeah.
um, Yes and no. I do think that the American dream sounds good in theory, but nah, it's just a scam. Sometimes I feel like going to college is a scam, but I won't get into that.
I'm not going to disagree with you at
uh,
all, honestly. I just don't want my kid to hear that, but I don't disagree with you.
yeah, and I
Um,
mean, look, college is great, but I do think that you got to know how to use college for what it is, and I think that you need to know what is your long term plan before you go to college. Don't just go and major in something just to say you went to school.
mm, good point. I mean, dude, we're talking about Hollywood a little bit here, but I mean, there's been like for musicians, for example, like James Brown came from nothing. Ray Charles came from nothing. Carl Perkins. Brother, if you want to hear about somebody that grew up in absolute abject poverty, Carl Perkins. You should hear the
Yeah,
guy's story. Dude, with
uh,
nothing. And look where they went, you know?
that should have been our first sign that Mortimer was kind of racist too. When Mortimer's like, "Yeah, they are musical people, aren't they?"
Oh my God. Oh. Like it gets a laugh, but maybe for the wrong reason. I don't know. I guess it depends on who you are and why you're laughing at it, but um you're right. Randolph did kind of show his colors. Oh man, you're ruining it for me. Yeah.
Yeah,
He did
he's
kind of
like,
show
"Yeah,
his colors
yeah,
early.
good. They're kind of musical people, aren't they?"
Oh man. And when he's over explaining things to him, like
Yeah,
or like eggs, like you might find a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich or whatever he says. Oh my God.
yeah,
Bacon, that was it.
which gets us the classic. Eddie looks at the screen and looks around like, "What?"
He breaks the fourth wall twice in this film, if I'm counting right. The first time in the car when he looks at the camera when he's arrested, and the second time is that moment with the bacon reference.
Yes.
I mean, that wasn't done too much in movies during this time, I don't think either. Um, but yeah, I had to get your opinion on this because I mean that dude, we could do a whole show on that. I think because I went into my past here on the show before, but like dude, I wasn't dirt poor, but like it was me and my mom for a long time, and dude, we were struggling. I mean, I've said it, I'm not embarrassed of it or anything, but our refrigerator was empty more often than not, and we were borrowing money just to get a loaf of bread. I mean, it was that bad. And like my kid doesn't get that, dude. And hopefully he'll never know what that's like. But as a result of
Yeah.
that, I appreciate things, Phil, more than he does, I think. And that's a thing. That's a thing now, you know?
Yeah. I am very much a non-believer in the whole struggling builds character. No, it doesn't. I think that if you can avoid struggling, avoid it. Because there are struggles that we went through uh early on that no, you shouldn't have to go through that to figure out who you are. I don't I just don't think that's true. But I mean, I think that's also part of that American dream thing that, oh well, you just struggle for a while to get where you need to be. Uh no, everybody has to do the bitter work, of course. Well, I won't say everybody, but a good amount of people have to do the bitter work.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean that it is totally necessary.
I will say that I disagree to the point of yes, it builds character. However, it also is not the preferable way of doing it because it affects you when you become an adult, dude, because like it's harder to accept victories. It's harder to take a win. And you would think it'd be the opposite way around, right? But like there's moments, even as a grown man now, where I have imposter syndrome, right? Where I feel like, well, I better not celebrate this. I could lose it tomorrow. It could all go away tomorrow. And which is like, and I know that comes from having nothing as a kid. Like it gets ingrained in your memory. Be grateful for everything you have. And again, that lesson's fine. But dude, it affects you later because you can't really, I don't want to say function, but you can't really take and accept things the way they really are. Cause I'm constantly looking behind, like over my shoulder, think, who's going to try to take this away from me? Who's coming for it? Dude, it's nuts, man.
Yeah. I do think that the struggle does help you appreciate things, and there are admirable character traits that can come from struggle. When I say things like doesn't necessarily build character, you don't necessarily have to do it. It's just like when I listen to people talk about student loan forgiveness and how, oh, well, I paid all of my student loans back. Why can't this generation do it? No, why can't the government um, help fund something that all of us have to do? If you're making going to college a requirement, why can't the government help fund it? That's a thing in other countries. So why can't one of the most advanced countries in the world do it?
100%. And the college system is a scam by itself.
Yeah, so I mean, it's getting more and more expensive to go to college every year. So no, it's not quite the same as you deciding, oh well, I went to college in the 70s or 80s or something, and I paid off my student loans. Why can't you do it? Why
Yeah.
why should I have to do it just because you did? Like, no, no thanks.
And by the way, you paid back 40,000. I owe 80,000. What are we talking about?
Yeah, it's a total difference, and I think that some older people you listen to talk about, oh well, I had to do this and I went through this. No, no, it should be that you went through that, so generations after you didn't have to.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And dude, on top of that, how many, and people use the phrase ditch diggers because it's like the go-to line for, I guess, what people consider to be meaningless or menial jobs or whatever. But like, if you're digging ditches, working on road crews, if you're, you know, in the sewer or whatever, people look down on, well, that's what that guy can do. No one knows that, dude. Had that guy had the opportunity, had that guy had the education, maybe he wouldn't have to be riding around the back of a trash truck. If he had had better opportunities in his life, that guy could have been a Harvard professor. Don't anyone tell me for a second that that person is incapable, but did his environment dictate a lot of what happened to him in his life? I would say absolutely it did. And plus, racial bias and a lot of other things that look down on people because of their skin color and economic backgrounds, which are ridiculous. But dude, unless you just have some sort of mental incapacity or learning disability, and even then, I mean, dude, I have a hard time believing that people shouldn't at least be allowed the opportunity to do better for themselves. Whether or not they get it, I know that's a whole different topic, but I
Yeah,
don't know. I don't think we should discount anybody because of the profession they're stuck in, you know?
yeah, I agree. I just think that sometimes older generations, sometimes when I listen to them talk about how, oh, well, I had to do that, so this generation is spoiled. It's like, no, I just think that we've advanced as a culture. We just don't have to do that anymore. I mean,
Right.
I I'm not that far removed from the generation of black people that could not read or write. That wasn't that long ago. We're not that long ago from black people still being sharecroppers. That's not that's within the last 100 years.
That's very true. Yeah, we're the farther away we get from those times, we're not far enough. We'll never be far enough. It's not that long ago. You're 100% right.
Yeah, no, I still know what it feels like to know certain people that were the first people to go to college in their family. Um, yeah, no, my grandparents definitely did not go to college. My mom went to college. My dad did not. Um, um, no, and I think a lot of people in my age group were definitely the first kid in their house to go to college.
Crazy. I went to some college. I didn't go to enough college to get a degree, which sucks. It is what it is. But, it's never too late. I could always, if I wanted to, go back and attempt to do something. Never too late. But, but there again, Phil, growing up, I wasn't the best student. My mom certainly, I mean, we couldn't afford to pay rent, much less pay Tom to go to college. It is what it is. That was a life. Could I worked harder? Of course I could have. Was I lazy? Yeah, I was. But like, I got myself to blame for that. But there again, was I a product of my environment? Yeah, probably so. Like, man, lots of stuff to dig through there. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M Podcast sent you. As far as the Dukes, it is just a film, right? But like this idea that rich people don't value anything above money, much less family or someone's heart or what kind of person they are on the inside, none of that really matters. The way they play with Lewis's life here is crazy. And also, Phil, they flat out say the usual wager when they make the bet. They've done this before.
Yeah.
Like, do you bump into that when you watch this movie? Do you ever wonder in your head who they do this before, like to begin with, you know?
Yeah, no, I don't really bump into it because I think we kind of understand quickly that they are just kind of not good people. Not even
Yeah,
kind of, they're not good people. And so I just don't think that they value anything other than money. Like you said, they don't really value morals or anything like that. So it doesn't really bother me because it seems in character for them.
it does. And they just threw him away. Um, and it's Penelope is their niece, right?
Grandniece.
Grandniece, that's it. Never forget, she's our grandniece, Winthrop. You better make an honest woman of her.
Yeah. Yeah, that in itself, and I think that is one of those things where you can get into, a lot of, some of the racial undertones in this movie, but uh, classism is a big thing in this movie. That it really
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter what your skin color is. There are a lot of rich people that do not care about you at all if you're poor.
Very true. And we saw in the Christmas party scene, we saw like people of color in suits celebrating at the Christmas party. And one actor even shakes Mortimer's hand and wishes him Merry Christmas. And I bump into that because I'm like, this is the same guy who we know is probably a little racist, and we don't know how bad until you see the bathroom scene. But like, uh, yeah, dude, it's such a weird thing. Like,
Oh man.
do you know what I mean?
So the other interesting thing about this movie is I worked in the financial district for a long time. I actually worked right next door to the Chicago Board of Trade, um, and so I I definitely know that way of life. There are definitely people that in that world that may or may not be racist. I don't really have proof of it, but it's just a it's just a means to an end. It's a job, and so I think a lot of people put up with people in that world because it's a job, and you know I'm just going along to get along. um,
Mm-hmm.
but so no, that doesn't surprise me at all. There are absolutely uh, a ton of black people that rub elbows with people that are definitely racist because it's a means to an end.
Yeah, I mean everyone's putting up with something, but some people put up with a lot more than they should, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, I think this movie does a great job of this, honestly. And you could call this cliche. You could say it's stereotypical. Oh, of course, the white people are evil and whatever. I don't really have a problem with any of this because to me, we're also talking about the Reagan 80s and we're only 3 years in, but
they have a picture of Reagan on their desk.
they do. Yeah, good call. And listen, not for nothing, kids. The 80s were a prosperous time. They were. But let's don't forget, Reagan also inherited a horrible economy from Jimmy Carter. These things go up and down. So, of course, it's going to come back up. Did he have something to do with it? Yeah, he did. But were there a lot of things he didn't do right? Oh, you better believe it, buddy. A lot of things we're not going to get into here. But the point of this is you look back on that time, it's rich white America is what it looks like. And that's what he looks like. For better or worse, I think this movie, whether they meant to or not, dude, I think it's doing a pretty darn good job of separating, you know, like you said, it's class warfare, I guess, to some degree. It's like, well, we belong over here, they belong over there. Ophelia's she's trash, and Billy Ray is trash or whatever. Like, okay, all right. So
Yeah, I mean, it is important that it's established that this happened during the Reagan era of the 80s because that was kind of the big boom of consumerism.
Mhm.
Um, and consumerism is a big part of this movie as well. It's a big part of the economy and everything moving forward. So, yeah, it makes sense.
And dude, Lewis's friends turned on him. His girlfriend turned on him. His butler, who was forced to turn on him, I'm sure they threatened his job if he didn't. Which he's another guy that's going along and eating crap when he doesn't want to. But it's the way he makes a living. What's he going to do? I mean, judging on the character's age, what's he going to go do for a living if he gets fired? So
Well,
like
yeah.
when Winthrop goes to his door and you can see the look on his face, like, oh, I don't like lying to him, but I don't have a choice.
Yeah, I mean, what's the guy, Todd? He seems like he was waiting to turn on Winthrop
Oh,
as
he
soon as he
couldn't
got a
wait.
chance. He couldn't wait to try and steal his girlfriend from him.
Yep.
Uh, yeah. You talking about classic. Muffy in a bathroom stall.
Oh my god.
Margaret by the lake.
Something down at Winston Hall, Wisconsin's on the lake.
Susan back at Whitley Hall.
Winley Hall. That's it.
Constant on the make.
Oh, it's good. Yeah, those guys singing. Even as a kid, it was uncomfortable because I'm like, this is horrible. Like it just felt, I don't know, even as I'll say it, even as a white kid in the South, it felt like this feels weird. Like this isn't these guys are too
Yeah.
rich for their own good, man. What am I looking at, you know?
Yeah, it definitely felt like everything you expected from uh older white frat guys that grew up to have well-paying jobs. And yeah, yeah, they were as obnoxious as you would think just in that scene of them singing.
Yep. Born into money, more than likely. Families had the easy road to college, easy road out of college. Jobs were ready for them when they graduated.
Yep.
Yeah. I have no idea what that's like, buddy. I have no clue.
Oh, I knew a bunch of people like that, and some of those people are really good people. But oh, I've met people that are absolutely like the Todds in this movie and are not.
Right.
Yeah, no,
For every reformed Lewis Winthorpe you meet, you'll meet a dozen Todds.
absolutely.
Yeah, dude. I look, kids. I'm not, dude. If I hit the Powerball, 2 days from now, whatever, hopefully I don't turn into a insufferable prick. Some people would say I'm that now. Hey, but
uh,
there's plenty of rich people out there, Phil, who are, like you said, good people. They give a butt ton of money to charity. They don't look down their nose at people. But like you have to admit, man, like the separation's probably always going to freaking be there, dude.
yeah, I just think that some of those people live in a bubble
Yeah,
and they just don't see the world in the same way, and that's okay. I think people's experiences shape who they are, and they shape their outlook on the world, and that's fine. I just think it only becomes a problem when people refuse to see anybody else's experience as valid.
very true. The scene where Philly's in the back of the cab and she takes his hand and she goes, "Soft hands and a manicure. Never done a hard day's work in your life, have you?" Like I've shook many hands through the years, Phil, in previous careers, and I come away going, "That's some manicured fingernails, buddy. Those hands were soft as pillows." Like, yeah, okay, I see who's working here and who's not. Like, come on, man,
Yeah,
crazy.
I think all the initial stuff to set up who he is so important, and so when everything is taken away from him, it's so jarring.
Yeah, it is jarring. God, dude, they just all abandon him. Like, he's left for dead, man. Like I mean, he could have been shanked in the holding cell for crying out loud. Like, dead. There goes the bet, I guess. I don't know, but
Yeah, Billy Ray in jail and him in jail is so vastly different.
mm,
Um, Billy Ray in jail doing his doing his kung fu thing, and the two black guys that are uh that are not believing any of it. One that he describes as a very white looking motherfucker,
Yep,
which is
yep.
hilarious. And then other black guys that just says yeah. That's
Yeah.
basically
Great.
just his line for the entire movie is yeah. And a very young uh Giancarlo Esposito sitting next to him. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh my God, is that him?
Yeah, he's in that. He's in the cell with them.
That is him. Holy Lord. Because, like, I watch that scene now and they're familiar to me because I've seen the movie so many times, but no, you're right. Holy Lord.
Yeah, very young Mr. Esposito. If people don't know, this guy is the icon at this point. I mean,
Yeah.
you think of everything he's done from the Spike Lee movies he's been in, Breaking Bad, uh, Better Call Saul, everything this guy's been in. He's
The boys.
yeah, the legend at this point. Um, but yeah, that whole jail scene with Billy Ray is so different, and Winthrop going to jail and the cop is telling him to strip, and he's just looking around like, "You hear what he said to me?" And everybody's just like, "Yeah, buddy, you're in jail." All the black people around him are like, "Yeah, this is how this goes."
Even the black cop is like, "You're in jail, moron. What do you think's happening here?" Yeah. Yeah, because Eddie Murphy does the quart of blood technique. You do that, quart of blood drop out of a person's body. I love that so much. How come we don't see no marks on you? It's great.
Because
Yeah, and like,
because
let's
I'm a
don't.
karate man.
Yeah.
Weak was on the inside.
They don't show their weaknesses. You mentioned Winthorpe in jail. Let's talk about Frank Oz, man. The cop on the take. The voice of Yoda and Fozzie Bear is a dirty cop, dude. Insane.
Yeah. Do you know what this stuff does to people?
You know what this stuff does to kids? You're looking at 3 to 5 mandatory, Lewis. And he takes such. He's so happy to do it. And we saw Big slip him money before all that happened.
Yeah, Beaks is just creeping around all the corners early in this movie with his trench coat and his fedora. He's a very shifty dude.
Yeah, God. Like a crooked Dick Tracy. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's also basically the Smithers meme later in the movie in the parking lot.
He is, isn't he? Oh God, that's good stuff. Yeah. Um, yeah, that's good. Yeah, again, we've got little things that pop up here, little cameos that pop up. I mean, we got Bo Diddley, man. I mean, come on, pawn shop owner. Go with the hat, the classic hat he wore for years.
$50.
In Philadelphia, it's worth $50.
$50, man. He's like describing everything about this watch and how great it is, and he's just like, nah, $50.
Yeah. Yeah. Then of course it said, "How much for the gun?" And Bo Diddley's eyes get real big on him. Like, it's not a good idea. Don't sell this guy the gun.
Yeah, man. There's so many stuff, and there's so many things from the beginning when he is losing everything that is funny. Him when they every time I see it now, I can't unsee when they have them take the stuff out of their pockets in that meeting, and Beaks goes almost directly to him. He goes and stands in front of one person first, and then goes directly to Winthorpe and picks up the bills. And I'm just like, you didn't see anything suspicious about this, huh? That he came right to you.
Yeah. No one else in the room. And then also, dude, how much was $150 worth in 1983? Like, did any
Yeah,
of these guys need $150, need to steal? No one called that into question. No one stuck. Dude, no one in that room stuck up for Lewis Winthorpe. Not one guy. Forget the friends who sang in the bar. None of the older guys who probably knew his father, who was probably in the business, and his grandfather. None of them stuck up for this guy at all, man.
they stealing. Uh, they got him out of here.
Yeah.
They got Lewis out of here for stealing. It was just like every time I watch it too, I laugh at how the crimes just start compounding. It was like, yeah, stealing a few bucks, then that turned into like dealing drugs and embezzling? Where did embezzling come from?
Yeah, no kidding. How? That must have been other stuff they did after the fact and we don't know about it.
Yeah.
And by the way, $150, according to an inflation calculator, in 1983, $150 was worth $448. And still, like, you have no need to steal that. None of these guys needed $448 or $150 at that time. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and Winthorpe's role working for the Dukes is he is manager and director or something like that, right?
I think. Yeah, because
Yeah,
they made the comment that he was managing their business.
yeah, I believe he's managing director. And later in the movie, when they tell Valentine what he's gonna make working the same job is $80,000 a year, which I was just like, that's not a lot for a CEO.
No.
Or an executive. Like most executives at that now are around 6-figure jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So $80,000 that's good money, but that's not that much money. But again, it was 80s, so.
Well, in 1983, 80 grand was worth about $239,367 in today's money. So maybe it was a big deal then.
Oh no, it was definitely a big deal then. It's just shocking to hear today, like $80,000.
But then you got to remember, like in 1983, a gallon of milk was probably 90 cents or whatever it was. It was nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Crazy. Don't get me started on that nonsense about how prices change and whatnot. Yeah. I mean, and we talked a lot about, and I like that we're starting from one to the other to sort of get how the characters change, right? But like, and by the way, I mentioned the team of Pryor and Wilder. Supposedly, this movie was developed in the beginning for Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder.
It'd have been interesting to see them in this. I definitely would have taken this over some of the other Richard Pryor movies we got.
Oh my God, can I be honest with you? And I love Akroyd and Eddie Murphy here. It's still, I can't picture anyone else. Pryor and Wilder would have killed this.
Yeah.
I mean, would have killed it. Oh my God, they were so good together, dude. They were good to independently of each other, but together they were so good. Like, yeah, ooh, it's good stuff. Yeah, so again, it was supposed to be Pryor and Wilder. The pair were in high demand after Stir Crazy. Pryor was severely injured after setting fire to himself while freebasing cocaine, which has become a punchline in recent years. The decision was made to cast someone else. Probably not a bad idea for the terms of optics of the situation. I can kind of understand the need to, and that's when they put in Eddie Murphy. The studio was initially unhappy with Murphy's performance in his first film, 48 Hours, hadn't been released yet, so that's how close this was. That film was well received by test audiences, so the studio decided to move forward with Trading Places.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, 48 Hours did really well. I'm not sure what they were not pleased with, but 48 Hours did really well for Eddie Murphy.
Yes. Oh, God, yes. Louis Winthorpe III, a wealthy commodities director at Duke and Duke. All right, so we have not covered all of it, but we've covered quite a bit of how Louis changed, became desperate. There's the great scene outside when Billy Ray's enjoying dinner and the judge's girlfriend's hitting on him, and he's out in the rain. He ends up so desperate he buys the gun at the pawn shop, and he's Santa Claus, and he wants his life back, and he's obsessed. And look what he does to try to get his life back. Let's flip the script here, man. What do you think about the character Billy Ray Valentine becoming so accustomed to his new life that and I think the Dukes were very happy with themselves when they put him on the spot and said, he's obviously hungry and he's obviously, he's in bad shape and he's lost everything. Don't you feel bad for him? And Eddie Murphy's like, well, I know people like this. You can't trust him. He's got money for drugs, doesn't he? Dude, what do you think about I don't want to say the bet was right because the bet is unholy on its face, but the Dukes were like blissfully happy in that moment because they were, at least one of them was proven right, dude. How messed up is that?
Um, I think that the message of this movie is kind of odd because we kind of come away even at the end of the movie thinking that money money is more valuable than anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think that you could see the change in him initially when he went to that bar and he's got his coat draped over his his suit, and he's just like throwing money at people, and he's kind of still being the Billy Ray that we know, just with money. And you can see him slowly changing in the party at the house, and how
Oh
he's
yeah.
just like, I don't want anything to do with these people anymore, get them out of here. um and just him going to bed that night, and how you could see that was just like the shift in him, and how he was still the same person, but you could see how much the money and the trappings of not having to deal with those kind of people anymore changed him.
Yeah, the party, especially when he's getting upset. He's had that house for probably a week or whatever
Yeah,
it's been.
he's telling people to use coasters. Who's putting their cools out on my floor?
Yeah. And you know that again, dude, had nothing. I mean, we assume he had nothing. And then he's got something. He's protective and he's sees it as a sign of disrespect. Dude, you're 100% right. This movie doesn't really, the only person that teaches anything to is the Dukes. And the lesson it teaches the Dukes is, hey, you're broke now. So, I mean, I guess it's
Yeah,
supposed to teach them don't mess with our lives. But the consequence is we got your money, we got rich, and now you're poor.
yeah. I mean, the Dukes really didn't learn a lesson. They just were they just were cheated. And to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
uh, no, yeah, Valentine and Winthrop just beat them at their own game, so they weren't any more morally upstanding than them. They just beat their own game.
God, they so did. They just crushed them. And for years, I've read, you know, people's opinions on what all the trading meant at the end, and I'm done trying to figure it out. I mean, dude, I work in decentralized finance at this point in my life, and I still have a hard time with what happened on the trading floor here at the end of this movie. But uh, I mean, money fixes a lot of problems. I don't, you know, we're adults here. We can be honest with each other. Money fixes a lot of problems. I mean, doesn't fix everything. Can't fix a lot of things that, you know, that's up to you. Can't fix relationships. And if it does, you probably don't want that person in your life anyway. So,
Yeah,
you
money
know,
money buys you comfort, and
mm,
one of the things that I kind of laugh, and I've had this ongoing joke with a friend of mine. It's about, and how, if I had money, I don't think I would buy a lot of material things. I think the most that I would enjoy my money on is not having to deal with people as often.
mm,
Just being able to say, nope, I don't have to do that. I can be over here in my own separate area. You guys stay over here. No, that would be the most things I would enjoy my money about. Like, no, you guys stay behind that curtain over there. I'm over here in this area. Stay over there.
right. Of course, money affords you you know, the opportunity to not have to deal with anybody if you don't want to.
Yes, and I think that is definitely one of the things that Billy Ray learned very quickly. Is that, yeah, no, I just don't want to deal with all these people. I would rather just have my house to myself.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a good call. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it until you say these things out loud and talk about a movie on a podcast. You don't really know. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, money kind of fixed everything for these guys in the end. But
I
you
mean,
know,
at the end of the movie, Billy Ray goes to an island and gets away from most people.
he does. Good call. Looking good, Billy Ray. Feeling good, Lewis. Which was the line between Lewis and Todd earlier in the film, which is nice. I've used that line before, by the way. You got to find a guy. You got to find someone who knows the movie, or they're not going to reciprocate. You deliver the first part, they're not going to know what to say.
Oh, you got wipe a little bit of the champagne off your lips right after you say it too.
Yeah. Even Coleman got a butler in the end. Even Coleman's life was fixed.
Yeah, he got the girl. He's no longer a butler.
Yep. Good stuff. And that island, all to themselves. I gotta say, they did it. They killed it. I'm happy for them. Uh so we still got more stuff to talk about here, right? But I do this. I don't know why I do this. It's become a habit as we review movies here on the show. But we know how people love reboots, and we know how Hollywood has no original ideas and had an original idea in probably 50 years, give or take. I don't know what it's been, but like if you reboot, and I'm not suggesting we need one. I don't think we need one, and I'm sure there's been other films that have done something similar to this in the past or since Trading Places, but nothing called Trading Places, nothing with actors this caliber. But if you do this again, Phil, this could work because there's timeless themes here, not necessarily rooted just in the 80s, but themes that would work today as well, especially today. Uh,
Yeah.
but I think if you were to do this today, you don't do it with a black man and a white man. I think you perhaps do women this time and see what kind of dynamic that is. And maybe, I don't know, I think it could still work. All right, let me throw it back to you. Do you think this works because of the time, because of the races, because of it being men? Is that why it all works? And would it not work if you tweaked it and switched up a little bit?
I think it could still work today. I think there are a lot of things in this movie that are still relevant. Um, I don't think it only works because it's a white man and a black man. I think that it can work if you uh switch the races and stuff, but I do think that there are certain things about this movie that are it kind of has an ongoing I don't even want to say a racial undertone because it's not really an undertone. It's right on the surface.
It is.
Um so I I don't know if the movie itself, the narrative of the movie works without that part, but I do think that you could revamp it um and do different characters with different races or different genders.
And
One
think,
of the things I immediately jumped at is how people were just comfortable throwing out the F word in this movie, and I'm like, yeah, you cannot do that anymore. The, no, you cannot do that anymore. The rightfully so, the gay community would not allow that.
very true. You're right.
And Eddie Murphy throws it out twice in this movie.
He does.
No, I'm sorry, yeah, twice.
Yeah, because he thinks that the Dukes are gay, and it was all a trap to get him in their house and do whatever he was thinking.
Yeah, which that is also a hilarious scene. Him looking around and trying to find the nearest black person he can find, and the nearest black person is the driver, and he's trying to go, "Well, what do you think of the situation? What's going on here?" And he doesn't really give him any real advice. He's just like, "Yeah, thanks for that."
Yeah, thank you. You've been helpful. Yeah. And it's funny, dude, how money changed everything. Because as soon as Lewis lost his friends left. And as soon as Billy Ray got some, his friends were there. He had friends.
Of
Like,
course.
yeah, that's a very interesting dynamic. Like, it makes sense, but it's also incredibly sad on both fronts at the same time.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that scene of him going into the bar and throwing the money around is just still hilarious to me. Uh, what the actor's name at the bar that is the bartender? I cannot think of his name, but this is a well-known black bartender. Um, the well-known black actor. He's been like everywhere. He's been in New Jack City. He's been in he's been in the Air Bud franchise.
Hmm.
He's been everywhere. I cannot think of his actor's name for nothing. Um, but he's basically telling him to get out of here, and he's just like, "Nah, I got your money right here," and he's just throwing it in his face.
Let's see. Yep. I don't have his name in front of me.
God, I cannot think of his name, and I'm gonna be mad when I think of it because of course that's his name.
Yeah, so the two this is not funny, but it's how they're billed. The two guys in the jail cell with Eddie were billed as big black guy and even bigger black guy. So,
I mean, yeah, that's basically their role in the movie is
I
to
mean, I'm
be
just saying, like, it's
two
probably
black
not,
guys in prison
yeah. Uh,
who see him later, and the guy is still just saying yeah. That's his entire vocabulary for the entire movie.
yep. Yeah. Yeah. And, Ron Taylor as big black guy and football player played in the NFL, J.T. Turner
Hmm.
as even bigger black guy.
Even bigger black guy. That's hilarious.
Played college football
Uh,
at Duke University. There you go.
Bill Cobbs. That's his name.
Ah, nice.
Bill Cobbs. And Bill Cobbs has been some of everywhere. This guy is, I mean, when you look at his, I'm sure if you pull up his IMDb, he's got a long resume of roles he's been in. He's been all over the place. He's done tons of roles on TV. He's been in stuff like Demolition Man. He's just randomly showed up all over the place. He's in That Thing You Do. He's been everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're right. Good call. Um, Jim Belushi's in this movie.
Yes, as the guy in a gorilla suit.
Yep. Hey, look what happened to me, huh? It's great.
Yeah, I love that he just like of course he just pops up in some way in this movie because of the connection between Saturday Night Live and the connection to Landis because Landis of course directed Blues Brothers.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Frank Oz, as we mentioned. And by the way, the other cop with him, Richard Hunt, was also a puppeteer. Sesame Street, The Muppet Show, Fraggle Rock. So both those guys together got the roles of the cops, booking Winthorpe. There you go. Yeah. And what's funny is with Jim Belushi, before I knew who he was, every time I saw his face, I thought, this has got to be John Belushi's brother. And dude, I had no clue who he was. I really didn't know. Because, 83, 1980s, ain't no internet. There's nothing. I don't have a smartphone. I don't even have a computer at that point. It's all black screen DOS Apple computers, IBM or whatever. Macintosh, excuse me. That's it. So, yeah. But I kept thinking, God, it looks just like John Belushi. It's got to be his brother. And then sure enough, it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like his career ended so quickly, but that's because, of course I was younger for most of the 80s, so I don't remember most of his heyday. I only
Mm-hmm.
remember like the late 80s, early 90s, and it just seemed like his career ended so quickly.
You talking about John or
Unfortunately,
Jim?
Jim.
Jim's done a lot of stuff. He still pops up. I mean, they did that godforsaken Blues Brothers 2000 movie, which is a steaming pile of hot garbage, and they put
Yeah.
him in it. But
Well, I mean, Jim had passed away by the time that movie came out, right?
you mean John?
John, sorry, John had
Yeah.
passed away
Oh,
by the time it came out.
yeah, for sure. John's been gone since. I don't think he made it to 1990. I don't know. I'm sure he didn't.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I feel like John's career is because we do see Jim Belushi quite a bit. I mean, Jim
Yeah,
had
yeah,
his
yeah.
own show for a while, but it just seemed like, man, what a
Ooh.
missed opportunity. And a
Lost
lot
him
of
in
stuff.
82. In 82 at age 33. 33 is the number, Phil. I'm telling you right now. 33 is the number.
Wow.
I mean, was it Hendrix? Uh, was it a Jim Morrison? Janis Joplin? 33 is the number, dude. I think it's 33. It's 33 or 32. I think it's 33. That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, Lord knows, such a talented guy too. Such an incredibly talented guy.
Yeah.
So funny. So funny. A lot of those legendary comics dead way too soon, dude. I'm sorry, 27. I got hung up on the age 33. 27 was Hendrix and Morrison and Joplin. I don't know where I got 33
Yeah,
from.
I was about to say I thought Jimmy passed before his 30s.
Yeah, crazy. Um, I'm with you. I don't know if you have to do this again. I got one better for you. Maybe not better. This does not. I don't know, dude. This never felt like. Well, can't wait to see part two. Because to be honest with you, this movie tells its story and it gets out. Like some
Yeah.
movies just tell their story and they get out. There's no need to come back to these characters 5, 10, 15, 20 years later because they're good. You would imagine these guys are good. They're happy. Everything's fine. I don't know, dude, to go back to this, and I hope they never do. But like, I don't even know how you would begin. I mean, dude, we go the same old route of, oh, this time it's about their kids. I'm real sick of that at this point. Like, we're doing it so much in Hollywood now. Because again, Phil, no original ideas. I mean, you just leave this movie alone, don't you? We don't need to revisit this world again, do we?
No, I don't think we need it. I don't think we need another one. Um, I think that we pretty much got the story in this one. I don't really need to know what happens to these characters afterwards. Uh, yeah, no, uh, I
It's a
don't need a
classic.
sequel or reboot.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
classic. Leave it alone.
yeah, the commodity stuff is interesting. As someone that um, took the series 7, and I actually had license and everything, though I never traded commodities. I was never on into all of the stock stuff, but uh, that stuff is interesting watching it as an adult because, like I said, I used to work right next the door to Chicago Board of Trade, and um, the classic Mortimer line was always quoted at work all the time. Turn those machines back on. Turn those machines back on.
Oh, it's good. I said, Mortimer, your brother, he's not well. F him. So good.
Turn those machines back on.
Akroyd on the street, dog pees on him. It starts raining on him. Tries to shoot himself in the head. The gun doesn't go off. He throws it and it goes off.
uh, yeah, his whole when he comes out and he has the black eye, like he comes out of jail completely different than when he went in there.
Yeah.
And like I said, when Billy Ray comes out of jail, he comes out completely unscathed.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Man. Oof. I just
Penelope
love this
sitting
movie, dude.
outside waiting for him, and that one guy is just like, "Yeah, you got a pretty purse," and just is just staring through her soul.
Yeah, he's like, that's your purse. And dude, she's great, by the way. She is so good as Penelope. She's like, yes. And it's very, she could tell she's so comfortable. He's like, that's a nice purse. She's like, thank you. It's very subtle. And she takes her perfume out and sprays the guy next to her. Everybody in this movie is perfectly cast, man. From their friends to everybody. I just everybody's so great here. Yeah, everybody's awesome. It's a classic too, but like so good.
Yeah, their their scheme to get one over on Beaks is kind of confusing when you look at it sometimes. Like
Oh,
it's just like they switch the briefcases and then they switch the briefcases again for some reason.
yeah.
Because that's really the only way they got caught. Because they switched briefcases at first, and he didn't see it. And then when they switched briefcases again, he noticed it.
Yeah, again, I get real lost in some of the nuances of what happens on the trading floor.
Well, I
Um,
mean, yeah, this was on a train. Like
on the
when
train, yeah, you're right, you're right. Yeah, because and listen, this brings up another interesting point because we got Lewis Winthorpe in blackface. Uh,
um, my takeaway from Lewis and Blackface is essentially that uh my headcanon for it is that Valentine coaxed them into doing it. Um, Otherwise, I don't think he would just do it. Now, of course, it is tone deaf. It's extremely
Sure.
tone deaf. But I think all of them come in doing a racial stereotype, which is hilarious when you think about it. And kind of like, all right, why did you guys think that you guys had to disguise yourselves as other as other ethnicities? Like, uh, he
Well,
comes in,
because
he's
Beeks
like,
knows what Winthorpe looks like, for one thing.
yes, but their disguises are just so stereotypical.
Yeah, that's true.
Like Coleman comes in, he's like the Irish priest, and he's got like the thick Irish accent,
He's drunk. Yeah.
and uh, Valentine is Cameroonian, and um,
She says she's from Sweden. He's like, Sweden, but you're wearing lederhosen. Like,
and she just she just goes back and just like, no, Sweden.
yeah.
It's like, nah.
Yeah, Beeks is a bad guy. It's hard to get something over on a really bad guy because his radar is going to be up for that crap, and it worked. Well, all right. So we said get one over on Beeks, dude. No one. Now listen, Al Franken and Tom Davis. We have to mention classic comedy duo from the 70s, 80s. Writers on SNL. Both went on to do other things. Franken's a senator, I think, still, or he was, or whatever he is now.
Do not think he's a senator anymore.
Probably not. No. And look,
No.
we don't have to go down that road. I don't have to agree with anybody's politics. It is what it is. But
Yeah, I don't think that he's a senator anymore after certain situations happen.
yeah.
So yeah.
Well, you can explain those two characters on the train because they're drunk and they don't have any. It's New Year's Eve, right? They don't have any idea what's going on. And so you can kind of cover that. But the guys working at the dock can't see that it's a dude in a gorilla costume. Are you serious right now?
Yeah, of course. And they're just like, they're in love. It's just like, yeah, no.
But we want to see Big Skid has come up and said, buddy, he got it for sure.
Yeah. No, and and you're right. You can completely just overlook it because these are two guys on a train on New Year's Eve getting drunk, and they're also kind of idiots. And so it's like, yeah, no, that this makes sense. Like them sitting next to the cage with the gorilla eating bananas is just so ridiculous.
Funny.
It's funny. It's just so ridiculous. Like, what are you guys doing?
Like the gorilla's okay with them. Like they're all three buddies who are just hanging out. They're comfortable next to him. He's okay that they're sitting there. He's not trying to attack anybody. He's real lovable. Yeah. Beak's making fun of him through the window because he's a jerk anyway.
Yeah. Which sets up him getting his comeuppance later in the movie.
Of course.
Yeah. Beak's giving his classic line, I'll rip your eyes out and piss on your brain.
Yeah.
Like, wait. Why did you go so extreme with this?
Yeah. And they're like, all right, you got it. They just turn around and leave. They don't even care. The bit where Beaks is on the payphone and he's talking. There's a girl standing there. He goes, hold on. F off. And it goes right back to his phone call as if nothing happened. That's the dream right there. If you could do that and not get punched in the mouth, that's a good day. Naga and Buku, exchange student from Cameroon. But that's Eddie in his element too, dude. Doing the voices and doing the overtop bombastic characters and
yeah, his rendition of basically it every man black person is every time I hear him do the voice, it's just like, yeah, when he's just like, hey man, what do you mean? Like
yeah. Beef jerky time. Oh God, I love that so much. And I don't know why it's so funny when he says, you want some beef jerky? And Beast goes, no, please. Like he's just beside himself, irritated. I don't know why that's so funny to me. It always strikes me as funny over the years.
No, it is funny. Him Him turning to Coleman and doing it, and Coleman's like, no, it gives me the wins.
And speaking of Airplane, the guy that's given, Franken and Davis the third degree about the gorilla in the cage is the air traffic controller from Airplane. Same actor. So there you go. Great movie. Got to do Airplane at some point. All right. So Phil, the bad guy's plan was actually pretty genius. I'm not going to argue with it. It was horrible, terrible thing to do to anybody, but it was actually, I can't find a lot of fault in it. The fault I find in it is not in the plan, it's in the execution. Because you are rolling the dice, assuming that every friend they have is going to turn on them. You're assuming that whatever family friends Winthorpe had are going to turn on him, including family friends who were probably attorneys. Because they make the jokes, they're a lawyer in the house, and all these guys turn around because a lot of them are attorneys. So if he's the third, where's his dad? Where's his grandfather? Are they gone? And lawyers that are friends of his through the years, you're rolling the dice. None of these guys are going to step up and say, Lewis, I don't know what's going on, but I owe this to your father. I'm going to take your case. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Because, buddy, if that had happened, they would have caught Beeks probably in short order. They would have figured this out. But the rich guys are rolling the dice that everybody turns on them. At the end of the day, they're right. So that's the biggest argument I have with the plan is that it's not foolproof. This thing could have fallen on its face at any moment, but it's movie science, right? Of course it's not going to work. What do you think about the plot or the bet here to screw these two guys over?
But they have two evil plans because their main evil plan is to corner the market on frozen orange juice.
Very true.
And the kind of the smaller plan is to make this terrible bet to ruin this man's life and replace him with somebody to make a point. Really, the only catch in their plan that really screws them up is Jamie Lee Curtis' character shows up when she does. Because if Ophelia doesn't show up when she does, and she doesn't ID Beeks, then this goes completely different.
Very true. Yeah, very true.
And it is a little bit funny that what are the odds that Winthorpe would meet a prostitute that also has an interest in T-bills, and she's been trying to save and invest. What are the odds of that?
I know.
But again, it's the 80s, and at the beginning of consumerism, and everybody was starting to get on board with learning more about the bond and stock market. So I guess it does kind of make sense, but it just does seem kind of odd. Like you meet the one prostitute that is pretty much wholesome outside of the fact that she's a prostitute, and she also has an interest in T-bills. She has some kind of knowledge of finance.
The odds were definitely in the Duke's favor through this entire bet. This entire film, the odds are in their favor the entire time. Because everything that could possibly go right went right. Nothing went wrong for them at all. Like, Lewis turned to a life of crime. Billy Ray, even though I'm listening to them explain things in those scenes, and suddenly Billy Ray gets really, really smart about this stuff, I'm thinking, I wouldn't have been able to understand this. And like, how does anybody who doesn't encounter this stuff every day, how does the lay person understand how any of this stuff works? But he did. Lewis did turn to crime. I mean, everything worked. But again, holy cow, dude, you're right. I think Ophelia is the X factor of this film. She's the game changer.
Yeah, if she doesn't ID Beeks and say that's him over there, and he's like disappears out of nowhere. Very shifty man. He's standing in the middle of the street, laughing it up at first, and then they turned around and he's gone.
Yeah, she's the X factor here.
Yeah, but their main plan to corner the market it's a smart plan. It's definitely illegal. It's definitely insider trading. Incredibly illegal. But then again, like I said, the funny thing about this is that it's not like the lesson from this is that Winthorpe and Valentine knew that they had inside information and then they reported them to like the SEC or something. No, they just used the information to their own means and beat them at their own game.
Yeah.
So like that's why I'm like, there's no real morals here. This is just like, I have more money than you and I'm gonna beat you at your own game. Um,
I mean, did either one of I mean, the Dukes didn't learn anything. We're clear on that. Did
no,
Billy Ray and Lewis learn anything? You would assume Lewis did. Did Billy Ray have anything to learn?
technically they didn't, because Winthorpe just went back to his regular life and he became more wealthy and he still got the girl. Um, Maybe he learned to be more accepting of certain people, but
Yeah,
um, I
because he
don't.
got
That's
humbled big time here.
yeah. Maybe he learned to be more accepting of people, and that's the lesson he took away. But he still came away with the lesson that no, whoever has the most money here wins. And
Welcome to America.
yeah, no. So I don't think on the financial side he really didn't learn anything. Uh, um, again, you can make the case that he learned to be more accepting of people, but that's kind of, we don't really see that in effect because he really only accepted the two people that helped him get more wealthy.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding.
So yeah, I don't know. But yeah, their whole scheme to corner the market is essentially simple. Their plan is, well, it isn't necessarily simple. If you don't know anything about commodities, their plan is essentially to, they once they get insider information, the information that was forged that they thought was the real information was that uh the market was going to, the market for oranges was going to be in demand. So orange was going frozen orange juice was going to be in demand because crops were going to get a were going to hit a low or something like that. And so they were going to buy up as much futures in it as possible so that it drove up the price. And they would be the ones to dictate the market at that point because they owned the most futures. Uh, but of course, that failed because um, the plucky heroes of this movie forged forged the information that they got, and they did the opposite. They sold short, which is a, I guess you'd have to explain. Essentially, selling short means is uh, they sold futures in the same way, but they sold them, how do you explain it to somebody that doesn't know anything about
It's
the
tough.
bond market? Okay, but so if you sell short, it's essentially you are selling with the promise of fulfilling something later, right? So I am, for example, selling you a contract or futures on this commodity with the promise of fulfilling that sale later. And so you're basically betting, in layman's terms, you're basically betting that the price for this future will go up at some point, and I'll be able to sell it back. Well, I'll be able to make a profit off of this later, and I'm gonna fulfill, you know, the sell of this later. So they, Valentine and Winthorpe came in and they sell short, and then when they see that, well, they sell short when the price is at, I can't remember the price in the movie, but it was when it was at the peak price. That's when Winthorpe is saying, wait for it," and that's when it hits $1 and whatever that amount was, $1.29 or whatever the hell it was. And so then they basically waited for the actual report to come out, and the price dropped. And so when the price dropped, um, the futures were only worth cents at that point. And so then at that point, they could just buy at a premium and make a profit.
I mean, it's it works. The plan works, right? Because like it on the trading floor, it is absolute chaos. And I love how he's giving Billy Ray the speech in the bathroom about kill or be killed. And you could see Billy Ray's physically nervous. He's nervous about going in there. It's so good, man.
Yeah, and so because they sold short, and now that you know they're buying back at a profit, they don't have to fulfill that contract anymore because they're now buying out. But the funny thing about it is, they're accepting all of these other people trying to sell to them at the end, except for the guy that's a representative for the Dukes, and he just kind of gets dragged out of the crowd. He's just like, I can't, oh, and he like faints. It's like,
And dude, Eddie Murphy's writing down so slowly. He's taking his time writing things down. I'm like, how are you getting all this?
yeah, 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 yeah. But that the funny thing about this when I think about it later is that, um, they essentially got caught in the act of trying to manipulate the market.
hmm
And the lesson is they went bankrupt. But there was no charges on them. They could have been brought up on charges because that's absolutely illegal.
And I was going to say, how do we know they weren't? But they were homeless people on the street.
Yeah, they essentially just went bankrupt. But there was never any police involved.
No.
But yeah, make no mistake about it. What they did was extremely illegal.
I think the takeaway here is people want to see the rich people get theirs in the end.
Yeah, and I mean they got theirs by, as Valentine said it, the worst thing you do to a rich person is make them poor. Um, but yeah, there's no real moral conclusion here.
Yeah, because like the more was that the Dukes people turned on them too. Any friends they had turned on them. Their families turned on them. All the people they were in business with together turned on them. Because again, if they weren't, they wouldn't be homeless and coming to America living on the street.
Yes.
Goes around, comes around. People want the story of what goes around, comes around. That makes for a happy ending. Because you want to see people get what's coming to them. Because in real life, people don't get what's coming to them. Rich white dudes that do terrible things and incite riots by being in, the government or wherever else don't have to go to prison. So in the
Yeah.
movies, we get some sort of sense of justice for God's sake. But like,
Yeah.
hui.
Yeah. And they use they use Ophelia and Coleman's savings
Mm-hmm.
to go in and sell short, and then uh when they're buying back at the lower price and you know they've already sold short at the inflated price beforehand. And so now they have this immense profit. I'm just like, nobody sees anything crazy about this. But again, I I guess the way to look at it is that the Dukes had already the Dukes had already driven up the price on their own. So they didn't technically do anything wrong other than the fact that they knew what was going to happen, but you'd have to be able to prove that.
Yeah, very true. Very true. And the shot where Lewis and Billy Ray are going down the hall and it's real quiet and they go around the corner and it's absolute bedlam. Like, I love that shot. Like there's some great shots in this movie. We haven't really talked about John Landis all that much. John Landis, who directed Blues Brothers, Animal House, Three Amigos, Coming to America, American Werewolf in London, Michael Jackson videos, right? This guy was everywhere during the 80s, man. I mean,
Yeah.
some really good work here, honestly, on production. We don't really look at it all or talk about it all that much, not in this particular episode, but there's a few really nice shots here. What I like, though, is that they just tell the story. Like, it's not a very cinematic looking film. There's no real sweeping wide cam angles. It's just, he's just telling the story. Like, I kind of like that. I mean, you can go the other route and do those really deep, intense shots that the camera stays for an uncomfortable amount of time or whatever. It's a comedy, man. Just tell your story and get out, which they accomplished
Yeah.
that, dude. I think everything from the director to the cast clicked in this movie, dude, for real.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why. There's always the shot that I always think of is them in the bathroom and Valentine is picking out his hair, and at the same time, Winthorpe is combing his hair, and all these people come rushing out of the bathroom to run on the floor, and they're just still like taking their sweet time, like, oh, well, I guess that's it.
Yeah, because they know what's going to happen. I have to say, is this one of the most satisfying ends to a movie you've seen? Because just to see the bad guys get theirs, man.
Yeah. Uh, her health machine's back on.
Yeah. That'll never get old.
Yeah, I think Mortimer, being confused and going like, "No, we've always had a place here. A Duke has always had a seat on this on this exchange." Just like, no, you've always had an exchange seat on this exchange because you've always come from wealth, and that's really to prove, kind of almost prove their point from the bet is that no, you were here because you came from a good situation. You came from old money.
Oh, well played. I like that. Mortimer was right. He was right twice, essentially.
Yeah, he was essentially right twice, but
Well,
they're so deep in their own bubble that they don't realize that they are bad people that have benefited from coming from money.
I take it back. Randolph won the bet, I
Yes.
think. Didn't Randolph win the bet?
Did he?
I thought so.
Yes, Randolph did win the bet.
Yeah.
Mortimer was saying Mortimer believes it's in your blood, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mortimer
Yeah.
was the one, which is boy is that in itself is racist. It's like
Oh my God, isn't
that in
it?
itself is racist that you think that are people no matter what their upbringing that they're smarter than somebody else because of you know their blood and their this color of their skin, like that in itself is extremely racist.
God, yeah. Yeah. And then, again, we thought that Duke or that Randolph was going to be the better brother, and in the end, he's no better. I have to say, it's satisfying. And this movie's still a classic for me, dude. I love it. I do consider it a Christmas movie. It's the first time I've watched it this holiday year. But I do love this movie. My mom, this is one of those movies that my mom and I can watch together. And like, even with the topless scenes, like it's, yeah, it's a little weird, but it's one of those movies we watched when I was growing up. And like, she was a big comedy fan. She didn't turn her nose up at anything like she could have, but she didn't. And, you know, uh, always a cool mom. So like, I can't complain too much, but dude, I love this movie to death, man.
When Winthrop going to the Christmas party and jumping up on the table and turning
Oh,
around with a gun and everybody ducks at the same time.
what stands out to me about that scene is the boots he's wearing.
Why is he wearing those weird white boots?
Yeah, the guy high heel boots, man. Like, what are you wearing, dude? It's like from a disco. What do you got on? Good stuff.
uh, yeah, whatever he could find, I guess.
Whatever he could find. Yeah, yeah. So as we're you know kind of taking this thing home, so where do you rank this for each one of these guys? Where do you put this movie for each of their careers? It's got to be. I mean, can we say it's top three for Dan Aykroyd, right? Is it top three for Eddie Murphy? Is it that high? You think?
I don't know if it's top three for Eddie Murphy, but it is
Tougher, right?
absolute. It's tougher to put it in his top five, but it is probably one of the most important movies of his career because it helped put him on the map. Um, it's definitely a classic for both of them. I think it's one of their top movies for sure. Um, Eddie Murphy, like I said, he just went on that run where I don't know, man. It's tough to put it in his top. To me, it's tough to put it in his top five. Um, because I think that he stood out more in other movies as a leading man. And not to
Mm.
say that he doesn't stand out here, but I mean, when you think about Coming to America, that's his movie. When you think about like Boomerang or like Beverly Hills Cops, those are his movies. Those are his like staples. Like
Sure.
Nutty Professor as well.
Yeah, it's tougher for Eddie, man. Uh, I'm watching it again, right? The scene at the end where he jumps into Akroyd's arms and the camera pulls back and they both hold their arms out and they're both holding money. That was the movie poster for this film. They took that image and superimposed it with like a white background or whatever with cash behind them. And I love how they're explaining to the Dukes what they did. It's so good stuff, man. Like, I made Lewis a bet, I won. It's great.
$1. Yeah, that is a hilarious scene that I forgot to. When he's explaining to Winthorpe the bet, and he's like, well, "How much did they bet?" And he's like, $1, and then it just cuts to him loading shotguns.
Yeah. And what's funny is to bring this whole thing full circle about the 80s, the actor, and I don't have his name in front of me, my apologies, the actor that comes up and tells them, well, it's time to pay up. Time to do this. He actually played Ronald Reagan I think it was in a made-for-TV film. So if you look at him, he kind of looks like Reagan. That's why he played Reagan in a film. But yeah, everything kind of came full circle here in this movie for sure.
Yeah.
You know the rules. Sell all the accounts at the end of the day's trading, without exception. $394 million in cash. Ooh.
A lot of money.
How many zeros is that, Phil?
How many zeros is that you said?
Yeah. Is it 10? 9, 10?
Said 394. That is it 10? I think it's 10.
All right. Oh God. Maybe it is 394
million.
Uh-huh. It gave it 11 zeros by default. Maybe that's billion. That's a good question. How much money does Tom not have? He doesn't know how many zeros are in a million. That's how much money I don't have. That's funny. Hang on. We don't need money. We got Google. There's 6 zeros in a million.
Yeah.
So in 1983 money, that is 11,788,828,112.45.
It's enough to bankrupt a company.
A country at this point, I think. Small country. Yeah. Yikes. Oh man. So we know two things about this. All right, we know one thing about this universe. The Dukes ended up on their feet again. They got on their feet again. And their family ended up on its feet. But guess what? The racism didn't go away. It was still there. If I'm remembering part 2 of Coming to America correctly. Am I remembering it correctly?
I've never seen it.
Oh, you've not seen it? Wow, interesting. Yeah, it's worth your time. I'm not going to sit here and say it was a great film, but it's worth your time. That's really the only thing we know. We don't know anything else. So give me your fantasy booking here, Phil. What happened to these characters? Where are they now? Are they still living on that island?
I don't know. I'd assume that they essentially eventually got bored with being on an island. It would have been pretty funny to get a universe where Billy Ray runs into Prince Hakeem, well, King Hakeem at this point.
Ah, nice. That would have been cool. I mean, Eddie Murphy's established his own universe of characters here.
Yeah.
I have to say the outtakes are some of the best outtakes. The classic 80s films have great outtakes at the end of the credits. There's good outtakes here where they're breaking and they're laughing and stuff. I wish they'd had more of that. So, well, kids, there you have it. That's Trading Places. Yes, it is a Christmas movie. Fight me. I don't care. It's also a classic for both Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy. And we've said a lot about it. We probably could have done a watch along, Phil. We've done so long on the show here. But it's a good movie, folks. Again, if you haven't watched it in a while, go watch it. If you've never watched it, for God's sake, what are you doing with your time? Great film. I'm actually watching it on DVD of all things because I still got DVDs, right? But and there it is in the credits: big black guy and even bigger black guy. Yeah, president of Heritage Club, corrupt cop, cop 1 and 2, hooker 1 and 2, party goer, bank manager. Yeah. Anyway, newscaster, gorilla. They actually have gorilla.
Gorilla.
I mean, I guess they have to. Yeah. Well, there you have it, kids. Phil, what do you think, my friend? Give me your last word on Trading Places.
The classic movie, just from the look of it, the sound of it. I mean, the score of this movie. Trading Places right away when you hear the music in the background. Yeah, there's a classic movie, constant quotables. Probably a high mark in the career for both of the lead actors. I'm sure that it is very important to young men everywhere that discovered that they like women as well.
Oh, well, I'm one of them. Big shout out to Jamie Lee in her heyday, by the way. Amazing. Yeah. As Phil said, a classic. Definitely worth a watch, worth a rewatch any old time you please. It's such a good movie. The score, we didn't give any love. You're 100% right. The opening intro's fantastic. The scenery of Philadelphia is great. Everything works in this movie, kids. I'm not making that up. Everything works. In this day and age of revamps and reboots and revisits and redos, we don't need it. We're good. I don't need a part 2 or a part 3 or a part 4. Leave it alone. If you want to tease it, I love the idea of teasing universes in other films. I have no problem with that. Those are fun. But let's leave this alone, kids. It's been long enough. We don't need to drag it up now. Let it go. It's a classic. Go watch it. Again, we at the 6M highly endorse it. And we'll see what happens with Eddie Murphy next. Can't wait to see what the future holds. The next Beverly Hills Cop movie, perhaps a new stand-up. We'll see what happens, kids. But in the meantime, that is Trading Places. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.